everyone! Today I am here to discuss the new movie that you might have seen people online talking about called My Fault or Culpa Mia. So this is a Spanish movie that is based on a book, which I did not know about until I started watching it. And the main reason I wanted to watch it was because the main character was played by our one and only Nora from Scum España, and I really liked her actress. I liked the character, obviously, so I was interested just to see and support what else she was doing. There was also another actor from Scum España in it, and they ended up kissing, and I think they just had like a brother-sister relationship on Scum España, so that was kind of a trip, but that's a whole other thing. So I was gonna watch this movie. I didn't have high expectations for it after seeing the trailer. I say that as someone who does watch those movies quite often and does enjoy some of them. Like, I just recently reviewed Perfect Addiction, and I thought that was a really good one and well done, like a very modern update with a lot of the like toxic tropes of many of these left out of them, which is why it's so funny that the next one I watch like that is the culmination of everything I think is wrong with movies like this. It had all the toxic tropes from the start. It wasn't even 5 minutes into this movie when I knew in my heart I was going to be making a video about this movie. It was probably about around the first time that the two main characters interacted that I could just picture every single person in the women's studies, the intro to women's studies class I took, throwing chairs, just hucking them if they saw even 1 minute of this movie. That is how infuriating it is on multiple levels. So the whole main premise of the story is the main girl, Noah, who is played by, again, the actress Nicole from Scum España, who I do have to say, I do not think Nora would be a big fan of this movie, but her character in the beginning is moving with her mom to her mom's new husband's house, which I always find very interesting when they act like you've never met the new husband before. Like, I think they had met, but it just seemed very like abrupt of like, you're gonna love the family. Like, she had never met the stepbrother before, like the new husband's son, which I think is very interesting because it's like, wouldn't you want that to just be like, if I'm a parent, I'm just thinking like, oh, I want to make sure they get along. I want to make sure like my daughter really likes this guy, you know? So it was just interesting that it was all like, you're going to be meeting for the first time and it's going to be great. So new stepdad is super rich. Like, we're talking, she gets a whole wing. I do love that when the mom gives her a tour of this gigantic, enormous house, like the things she points out are like kitchen, living room, dining room. I'm like, yeah, okay, those are all like usually essentials of a house. I'm gonna need you to tell me what like the left wing is for, right? Like, show me where the library, the gaming room is, all that stuff, please. Thank you. So another thing we get introduced to about Noah from the start that's kind of interesting, I will say, definitely sets this movie apart, especially towards the end, is that she's really into racing cars. It's something she used to do with her dad, who's kind of this mysterious figure that's not really talked about. We just see a picture of him. So that's just like a thing about her character. The two things we know about her within like the first like 30 minutes, I would say, races cars, and we also see her, which I think is such a cliche, but like that's where I was like, okay, of course. She was reading like Pride and Prejudice on the way, and like every time you see her in the beginning, she's just reading a book. But once she gets in the relationship, reading books goes out the window. Like, that's just like, oh, that's just not part of my personality anymore. It starts off very contentiously between Nick and her new stepbrother, and I'm gonna keep referring to him as her new stepbrother because I want you to remember they are step siblings. Like, every time I see a movie like this, Par from Life with Derek, I always think how frustrating it must be for actual step siblings to have movies like this, because it's like so weird, and it's like, I get the idea of like making it like a like forbidden romance and how it's supposed to be like so attractive, but like a forbidden romance is like not dating your brother's best friend. That's a forbidden romance. It's not dating your step sibling, you know what I mean? So they get off to a bad start because she's obviously pissy about everything, and he's supposed to be like this golden child who very easily is not. Like, just one look at the kid and you know he's been drinking or doing some type of illegal substance in the last 24 hours, so I don't really know how the dad is all like, he's my golden boy or whatever. They, of course, want them to bond more, so when she wants to leave, they have him bring her home before he goes to a party. She ends up mentioning his mother, and he reacts by physically removing her from the car. That's right, he pulls over in a new town for her, where she does not know anyone, on a busy road, and pulls her out of the car. And what was interesting to me is it's later established that like physical violence is like a big trigger for her. So I don't know how this immediately wasn't a red flag. Like, he pulled you physically out of the car. He left you stranded on the road in a town where anything could happen to her. Her cell phone's dead. She can't call anyone. Like, I was just like, this is the guy we're supposed to root for? That somehow worked out well. She ends up at the party that he was going to, and then we find out that these guys aren't just rich and pretty. They're rich and pretty and also somehow fighting the local town's gang. Like, everyone at this party has like bandanas that they wear that they coordinate with their outfits that's supposed to signify like what gang they're part of. So then like they can all go to the same party but just get in fights because they keep bumping into people that have different bandanas and stuff. So I don't know, it's a lot. I was just like, this is more than I thought it was going to be. So this gang is a big part of it because the main dude is super creepy. He's like 30 and yet he really is obsessed with Noah for some odd reason and obsessed with hanging out with a bunch of teenagers for some reason. Now the gang comes up again when Noah wants to go home at this other party, so she gets in Nick's car, or actually he puts her in the car, I'm pretty sure, and is like, I'm gonna get your friend, like, you need to go home because, you know, obviously I can hang out at these parties, but they're too much for you, right? So she ends up in his car, and somehow the main guy from the gang, who they're supposed to be street racing, because it's also a thing they do, they like bet their cars and stuff, he's like, oh, you're the one I'm racing, you're in the car. And she's like, no, I'm not, like, let me go get him. And like, obviously I'm not the one racing. He's like, no, if you leave the car you forfeit and I win. And she's like, oh, okay. So he kind of puts her in a no-win position, not knowing that she's amazing at racing cars. So she's like, okay, let's go for it. The more he taunts her, he's like, come on. And she obviously destroys him in the race because she's so good at all this, which people don't know. And then the little mother trucker gets out and is like, oh, that didn't actually count. Like, I was supposed to be racing him, so like he forfeits. And I'm like, you just said she would forfeit if she got out of the car to get him. And now she's gonna forfeit because he wasn't in the car. Like, it's like so frustrating that like no one was like, this doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? But also at the same time, it's a 30-year-old gang member that's hanging out with them, so I see why no one really fought back too hard. And then through really no interaction, like no additional stuff, the last thing we saw was he's kind of mad at her about everything that happened with the car and putting herself at risk. All of a sudden they're kissing, and we get probably the creepiest line where he says that he shouldn't be doing this because he's 22, and she responds, and I quote verbatim, "Then kiss me until I'm 17. What? My jaw dropped when I saw that scene. I was like, you're telling me not only are they step siblings that we're supposed to be rooting for, but you're telling me that now she is, I still don't even know, 16, 17, and he is 21 at the time, because they do go into a montage later where he has a birthday and turns 22. You know who I never see have a birthday in this movie? Her. Which means she stays the same age the entire movie according to the plot line. So now you're really freaked out. You're like, okay, this is wrong for multiple reasons. And I feel like a big thing of this movie was they just never showed developing scenes for their relationship. Like, they were just mad and then making out, and then they were like, we can't do this, and then didn't really have a conversation about it, and then we're all of a sudden making out again. Like, I felt like it was such a long movie, especially for this type of movie. These movies are usually like an hour and 30 minutes, and like 50% of that is movie, like, music montages, so you know, like, that's kind of the benefit of these, is like, yeah, they're bad, but they're quick, so it's over, it's painless, right? This one dragged on, and the amount of, like, added subplots there were crazy. And for the fact to be so long and then still feel like I'm missing scenes from it was just insane. Like, even towards the end, they have this whole discussion about how they can't be together. She can't do this to her mom. It would break her heart. Like, her mom has been through so much. They'll have their one last night together, blah, blah, blah. And then towards the end, like, there's just no discussion about everything, and all of a sudden they're just fine. Like, there's no discussion about, like, oh, like, I want to do this, anything. All of a sudden it's just like an unspoken thing that, like, oh, they're gonna be together now. And I'm like, where was the change between, like, oh, I can't do this to my mom, to now, like, oh, we're gonna be together forever? It was weird. The other thing about this movie is the subplot is that throughout the movie, ever since they moved to the new town, Noah has been getting these very creepy notes being like, I'm watching, I'm close, can you feel me closing in on you, you're gonna pay for it, and doesn't tell anyone. And in her mind, she's thinking it's the gang member that she beat, Ronnie, that he's just trying to, like, freak her out and get back at her for embarrassing him, but still, like, tell someone. Like, there's such creepy notes, and they show up in, like, such creepy places. Like, in her room, she'll get a bouquet of flowers delivered. It's like, you need to stop this. You need to tell someone what's happening. And it turns out that it's a mix of Ronnie, yes, but it's also her father, who she put in jail after he attempted to kill her because he was physically abusive to her and her mother. She has this scar from it that she like is terrified of, and that's a big reason why she like doesn't like the violence that Nick does, because not only does he street race, but he's also part of like underground fighting, because of course, like literally the funny thing is I'm watching this movie and I'm like, okay, you know what, like a big thing these days is like they have kind of like a sports theme to them, right? And it's been boxing lately, so it was kind of not refreshing, but I was like, at least they did something unique in their own in doing car racing. And then the dude underground boxes anyway, and you're like, why can't I escape this? Why is this always popping up, you know? It's like a pimple right before picture day. It's just like clockwork. You can count on it popping up. So yeah, she has this whole scene where she's like very scared of him when he's fighting and like saying that like he needs it for like release or stress relief or something like that, which again, correct. That is a huge red flag. I don't know why that was the first red flag and it wasn't the whole pulling you physically out of a car and leaving you stranded on the side of the road thing, but that was the red flag for her, and I do feel like that was done very well, but I also feel like that she shouldn't have got back with him then. Like, he was like, oh, I'm gonna change, like, I didn't understand that that affects you so much, but it's also like, go to therapy, bro. Like, you shouldn't have someone say, like, you shouldn't have to punch a person to feel like you can get through the day, you know? Like, that shouldn't be her job to emotionally regulate you and just get you maybe to, like, actually talk about your feelings. So that was a whole crazy thing. But the craziest thing, guys, the craziest thing is that the dad finally shows up, right? And kidnaps her. And is like, I want money. I don't even know what his plan really is, because they're all like, no, he doesn't really want the money. He just wants to make the mom and Noah like suffer and everything. So he kidnaps her. And then he puts her in the car that they had lost earlier in the gang race, makes her drive it. But from our point of view, he isn't like physically, like, I would be doing anything I could to get out of that car, right? Like, crashing into a wall, anything. Like, at this point, if I crash and, like, we all get hurt, that's better than wherever dad is trying to take her, right? She's just so, like, willing, I feel like, to go along with, like, chasing from the police and stuff. And it literally turned into, like, a Fast and Furious movie with the stunts that are happening. Like, at one point, I'm like, I'm watching a Fast and Furious movie. This is insane. So it ends up with her and the stepbrother facing off in their little fast cars, and she gives him that little look of, like, I've got a plan, and he's like, I know what you're talking about. They do this, like, spin trick move, which they do it, and then you're like, okay, and then as they're doing it, they both duck, and the cop shoots the dad through the window, and I'm just, at this point, I'm like, this is an hour and 57 of my minutes of my life that I am never getting back. Like, it was insanity, and I couldn't. So that happens, they reunite, he's dead, they go back, and that's where I was saying, like, there's no conversation about, like, oh, like, I was really scared about losing you, like, I think it's worth risking this relationship or something like that to be together. There's nothing like that. It's almost like their parents set them up to a test, because then they're watching them afterwards get together, and it ends with the parents being like, we have to break this up, and you're just like, there's gonna be more of this? Really? It was just horrifying from start to finish. The only part that I liked was there's one part where her ex-boyfriend comes, and she had sent him a picture of her kissing Nick to be like, hey, you know, like, I can get over you as much as you can get over me. But since Nick's her stepbrother, when the ex-boyfriend comes, she's like, oh, wait, he can't see you because then he'll tell my mom that I was kissing my stepbrother. So there's like a whole scene of them trying to hide him, and I think the way he like hides his face is really funny and interesting, because he'll like try and talk to him, but like just move, like, that part actually got a chuckle on me. But again, way too much emphasis on this relationship that you're like, this is so creepy. Not only are you step siblings, but she is underage. Like, this is, there was just a lot to this, and I honestly, like I said, felt worse. I felt icky after watching this, and the fact that there might be more, if you can make After look like it's an okay movie, that's honestly, like, you should win an award in my book, because that's just, I don't know. The feeling I felt, like, I was like, has feminism, did the wave of feminism never happen? Like, that's truly what I felt like. Like, the bras had not been burned. I felt like after I watched this movie, if I went to a bank, they wouldn't let me get a credit card. They'd be like, where's your husband? Like, I felt that kind of way, you know? I had to call my friend on the phone and be like, hey, we're allowed to vote, right? Like, if that's a thing that still happens, because I just felt like I had been set back so far after this. It was, man, it clocked all the things. I almost want to show it to, like, the women's studies class just to get a visceral reaction. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, it's like when you see something, you're like, someone else has to see this. Like, this can't just exist in my brain. There needs to be someone else that can take the burden of what I've witnessed off of me and share this with me. I need a partner in this. So yeah, interesting movie, I'll say that for sure. And yeah, if you've seen it, let me know what you thought down below in the comments. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!